together as men, as leaders of the church, as leaders of our home. And I feel so privileged to have Brother Billy here and to teach us so many wonderful things, to have Brother David, Brother Rob, just really set the stage for us and give us some context of leadership. And I'm really humbled by the fact that even just to be invited to the table here this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jules, and one of the members of the congregation here at Northwest. And I don't have a sermon for you, and I want to make sure I'm clear. It's not a sermon. What I do have for you is a little exercise and a little lesson that I think will help support really some of the fundamental concepts and teachings that we heard this morning. One of the things I enjoy doing is I work for the Home Health, which is our health system here, those of you from the area. And it's a privilege to work for that organization, and the privilege I get to sort of have in that organization is I get to kind of help coach our leaders to really help, to really improve the work that they do and improve the relationships that they have.
Can you use the mic because we're trying to record this?
Oh yes, I can. So, thank you so much. And what I'd like to share with you guys this morning is kind of something that comes from my professional world. And but over the years, what I've realized is that actually, well, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, if you're in the business world today, there's so many fads. There's so many books out there on leadership. There's so many things that you know. Well, just everyone wants to show you or tell you how to be a leader. And what I've come to realize is that, well, we've got the greatest book on leadership that there ever was, and that's the Bible. And I see all these great things come out in terms of concepts of leadership, and what I realize is that, yeah, that's from the Bible. Yeah, I know what chapter that comes from. Yep, in fact, I even know the verse. And it's so easy now to just see this. So I'd like to share something here that I do at work, and I think applies to us as Christians and as leaders. So before I get started on my little lesson here, Brother Kurt has wonderfully obliged me, and I've got this little game right here, and he's going to help me with my little game. So here's the deal. I was cooking the other day, and what I needed to do was get my ingredients together, and so I had my salt here, and it said, get your salt and get your parsley. So I had my salt and my parsley, and then I realized something. Well, as I read the directions, what it said was, don't mix them. I wish it had told me that before I mixed them. So, Brother Kirk said, don't panic, Jules, I'll help you. So I said, okay, well, he said, what do you got? I said, well, I got a straw. My kids love chopsticks, so I got training chopsticks here. I got a balloon, I have a fork. I found these little tweezers. I got a big straw. I got a pencil with no eraser, and I have some duct tape, because you know duct tape can do anything, right? It's actually painter's tape, right? Would you mind helping me? So I've got to get this ready for the potluck. So I've got 30 seconds. Can you separate that parsley out of the salt for me in 30 seconds?
You know, I know why you did this. I'm a Tennessee fan and ACC.
You wait, that's 5 seconds already. That's 10 seconds.
Oh, sorry. Let's see here. How separate does it have to be?
Well, you know, you got to eat this. All right, that's time. Well, let's see how you did. Not too bad. Not too bad. Just a question.
Yeah.
Why didn't you use this?
I have no idea why I didn't use it.
Well,
I saw the big fork and saw the big.
why didn't you use it? Why didn't you use this?
I didn't want any.
Okay, you're good. Would you do me a favor? Can you blow that
Sure.
up for me, please, and just hold it? Ah. Yeah, go ahead. A little bit more. Yeah, I know that nice coiffed hair of yours. Would you mind rubbing it on there and getting a little static electricity on that balloon?
This is cool. Which one's you going to pick up?
Now, can you go ahead and pass it over that parsley for me, please?
Wow.
do you have any salt in there? It's just parsley, right?
No, just parsley.
How about that?
Yeah, cool.
How about that? Now, would you have ever thought
No.
to use that balloon to do that? No. So what's interesting is you have a lot of tools, right? And all these tools, well, they do all kinds of stuff, right? But at the end of this, the real lesson was you had a balloon. What you needed to do was fill it up with air. And then what you needed to do was rub it, because the balloon needed to be charged. You see, this is, you have a lot of stuff, and they all do a lot of things. But the real secret to this was, at some point, they had to be something that they weren't necessarily apparent, that wasn't necessarily apparent. So, at work, we have this thing. If I can get my little clicker to turn it on here. So, my part of the lesson today is about exercising leadership. Exercising. Maybe in other words, practicing. So, these are the questions we ask leaders, and this is the question we can ask ourselves as leaders of the church. To be a leader in the church, who do I need to be? What do I need to do, and what do I need to have? Now, this is what we call exercising leadership. It's this going through this sort of series of questions and exercising those questions every day. And ask myself, who do I need to be today as a leader in my family, in the church? What do I need to do in order to be that leader? And what do I need to have in order to be that leader? But you see, it's still predicated on this concept of be first, and then do, and then have. Brother Kurt, when he came to exercise, what he heard me say was, here's what I want you to do, here's what you have. And so the focus, I kind of set him up to focus on what he had to do and what he had. But what I needed him to be was someone who understood the problem. And so, you see, in life and everywhere else, even in the church, when you come from a place of starting with, well, what do I have or not have? What can I do or can't do? And then we try to evaluate, okay, now, does that allow me to be who I need to be as a leader? Well, the problem is, it's never enough. You can never, and as a leader, when folks look to us, you know, if we start with, what do I need to do for you, or what can I give you? The thing about that is, the more you can do for someone, the more they need you to do. The more you can give someone, the more they still can need you to give. But you know, you talk about that young man just being there for that young lady. That's what she needed. She just needed him to be there. What he did, what he gave her, came from a place of being. So as leaders, we have to come from a place of being first. You see, when we start with what do we have or what do we not have, there's always, well, it's never enough. What do I do for you? What do I need you to do? It's just never enough. But when I'm the right person, when I'm the right leader, those other things, you see, actually, you start with who I'm determined to be. Then it's easy to say, now what do I need to do and what do I need to have to be that person? And those things come so much easier. So I'm going to give you some examples from life. You heard this before, right? Have, do, be, which is in red, right? No, wrong. If I were rich, have money. I would retire. That's what I would do. Right? And then what? I'd be happy. And we know that's a formula for failure, right? But look at the be, do, have. You know, if I just determine I'm going to be happy, well, when I retire, that's what I'm going to do one day, hopefully. But even if I'm not rich, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In fact, even if I don't retire, it doesn't matter. If I'm happy in what I'm doing, and I'm happy with what I have, because I've just already determined I'm going to be happy, then I'm happy. And that's the path of success. So at work, right, we hear this all the time. Because in the medical field, severe shortage of nurses and physicians and everything, right? So what do we hear all the time? Well, when we have enough staff, then we can do our jobs, right? And then we're going to be happy in our work. Have, do, be. Now, look at the green here. What does be, do, have? You know, we can be happy in doing our work, right? We will do the best that we can, and we will have the kind of workplace that we want. Be happy. Now, you know, that's great in the corporate world or the business world, but you know, this isn't new. This is biblical. Exodus chapter 5 through Numbers 20, anywhere through that whole area there, what you will read about is the story of the nation of Israel as the Lord led them out of Egypt. We know the story, don't we? And they spent 40 years wandering in the desert, right? So what do we know about those 40 years in the desert? They did a lot of complaining, a lot of murmuring, right? And as I was looking and thinking about that, Exodus chapter 15, verse 22. You know what they said? We have this bitter water to drink. They started. The problem of the children of the nation of Israel in those 40 years was that they were coming from a place of, Lord, what have you done for us? What haven't you done for us? Lord, what have you done for us? What haven't you done for us? Moses, what have you done for us? What did you do? What did you not do for us? And you see, no matter what Moses did, no matter what the Lord did, well, it was never enough or it wasn't right. No matter what the Lord gave them, it just wasn't enough or it wasn't right. See, they weren't coming from the place of being that the Lord actually, for the whole reason why the Lord took them up. Do you see Exodus 6 and verse 7? The Lord said to the nation of Israel specifically why he took them out of Egypt. He said, for this very reason I will call you out of Egypt. And I will be, there's the word, your God. And you will be my people. You see, the purpose of taking them out so that they could be his people. It wasn't about he was taking them out of Egypt so that he could do certain things for them, or so that they could have certain things like the promised land. Even the promised land was something to have. But the promised land was not the reason why he took them out of the land of Egypt. He took them out so that they could be his people. Now, that's what the Lord wanted from them, was he wanted them to be his children, his people. Now, they focused on what they had and what they didn't have. Exodus 15:22, first thing it says, we have bitter water to drink. Focus on have. Right? We don't have enough food. So the Lord provided them manna, Exodus 16. Well, okay, so the Lord said, here's something you can have. Now he gave them bread from heaven. And you know what else they did? Well, now we're thirsty, Exodus 17. We don't have water again. Here we go. Right? You see the path? Now, so he gave them water to drink, right? And then in Numbers 11, we read actually, they complained again about not having food. And we know he gave them quail. So he gave them manna, he gave them quail. Every time they complained about something they didn't have, he provided, and yet they still complained. Because you see, they were coming from a place of have first. And you know what's interesting? You get all the way to Numbers 20, chapter 20. Do you know what the last complaint of the nation of Israel was? See, they first complained, we don't have water, we don't have food. Now, okay, that's something to complain about, maybe. But you know what the last complaint was? Proving this theory that the more if I'm just so focused on what I have or don't have, it's never enough. The last complaint, they said, we have no grain, no figs, no pomegranates, and no water. No figs, no pomegranates. You see, it was just never, the Lord could not do enough of it. He took them out of slavery. So they were focused on have. But what about do? Exodus chapter 5. You know, when they started murmuring and complaining, you know what their first complaint against Moses was? We're out here in the desert, and it's because of what you did, Moses. What you did was you took us out of Egypt, where at least we had this and we had that. You see, our problem is what you did, Moses. What you've done. That was their first complaint under do. Second complaint, Exodus 14. Right? They complained, Moses, Look at all you're doing to us. This is what you're doing to us. Why don't you leave us alone, Moses? I mean, here was Moses doing all these things to lead them. And here's the point, right? Moses was doing these things to lead them. He provided water right through the Lord, right? The Lord, Moses, was doing these things and making sure they had these things, and yet all they heard was Moses and the Lord heard his complaints. Right? Numbers chapter 12. They complain about Moses' leadership. The first 12 verses. Moses, here's what you're doing wrong as a leader. Here's what you're doing wrong. Right? Numbers 14, verse 3. They said, Lord, why are you doing this to us? The doing. And then later on, Moses, why are you doing this to us? You see, they were focused on what they had, didn't have, what was being done to them. And finally, Numbers 14, verse 20. Why did you bring us out here in this wilderness? Why did you do that to us? You see, they were focused again on have and do. And they completely forgot about the reason for this whole journey was about so that they could be the children of God. So you see, when they started from a place of have, do, be, we got murmuring in the desert. But if they would have done as God had told them, to start from, I will be your God and you will be my people, and here's what I will do for you, here's what you'll have, they would have been content. In Mark chapter 10, verse 17 to 22, we have a New Testament example of this. We have the parable of the rich young ruler. And we know the story, not parable, but the story of the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler comes to Jesus, and do you remember what he says? Lord, what must I do? What shall I do? Now, what we know already, he had great possessions. He had a lot. That's what right? So he had a lot of possessions. So he already had that, have. So he came to the Lord and said, now what must I do? See, he was coming from, I already have, now what must I do? Because, Lord, I want to be your disciple. And the Lord rebuked him. Because the Lord said, you're coming from the wrong angle on this. So, what did Jesus tell him to do? Jesus told him to get rid of the having and the doing first. And he said, what? I need you to be my disciple. Right? Now to do that, go sell all your possessions and follow me. So he told him what he needed to do. Sell your possessions and follow me. And then you will have my blessing. Then you will be my disciple. And of course we know the story. How did he walk away? Well, the Bible tells us he walked away sad because he was stuck in have, do, be. He couldn't be a disciple. He just wanted to know what he had to do and what he needed to have. Here's another story in the New Testament. In Luke chapter 10, we know, here's the story of Jesus, and he goes to the house of Mary and Martha, right? And remember, have, do, be leads to complaining, right? And we know the story. They went to a certain village, a certain woman named Martha walked into the house. She had a sister named Mary. And we know Mary sat at Jesus' feet. Now Martha was so concerned with what they needed to have. We've got to have dinner ready. We've got to have this prepared. We've got to have that, right? And then, to have that, I've got to do this, and I've got to clean this, and I've got to get this fire started. Martha was so consumed with what she needed to be prepared for Jesus, and what she needed to do to be prepared for Jesus, that she wasn't focused on the fact that Jesus was in the house.
Yes.
Now Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. Because as we read the story, Jesus said, Mary has chosen the good part. See, Mary was more concerned about being Jesus' disciple. Being Jesus' disciple. You see, she sat at his feet and listened to him. You know what that means? That means she was more concerned with being a hearer of the word than a meal preparer. You see, Martha was being a meal preparer. Mary was being a hearer of the word. And Jesus said she chose the good part. What she chose to be was better. So this concept of be, do, have, it's great. It's really effective leadership. It positions us in a way to exercise our leadership. It gives us something to think about every day, so that whether it's leading our families or leading the church, we have to remember that the Lord is holding us accountable for who we are.
Yes.
And He expects that the things we do and what we need to have will be in support, first and primarily, for who we need to be. And so that's the difference between Martha and Mary. Who are those guys? You tell me. Who are they? Who are they? Say it. I heard someone say
Athletes.
they're athletes. That's who they are. They're soccer players, aren't they? That's who they are. What are they doing? They're playing soccer. What don't they have?
2 legs.
Now, you know, that's what I call be, do, have. At some point, he said, I'm going to be a soccer player, right? So I'm going to go play soccer. It doesn't matter if I have a leg or not. I have a crutch. So, you know, any one of those individuals, any one of those men right there, they're men. Any one of those men right there could have said, you know, I don't have a leg, therefore I can't play soccer, therefore I'll never be a soccer player. It's a different angle to take.
Yes.
But I see some leaders here. I see leadership here. These are men that are coming from a place of being. They had already determined in their mind they will be a soccer player. So the lesson here for us is that as men, we have to determine in our mind that we will be a leader in the church. We will be a leader of our families. We will be leaders of society. Now we just have to figure out what we got to do, what we got to have in order to get there.
Yes.
But if you have not determined it in your mind, well, then it's not going to happen. So I did this little exercise the other night. You can see this. And literally, in about 2 minutes, I made a little chart of be, do, have. And I thought about everything in the Bible. And by the way, this list is actually way longer than this. This is the first few I can capture on a flip chart here. But if you guys can see this, right? Look at what, if I say, look at the things that the Bible asks us to be, or who we need to be. Holy. We need to be holy, faithful, courageous, humble, right? Those are the things that the Lord asks us to be. Now, what does He tell us to do? He tells us to love, to forgive, to teach, to pray, to visit. And again, the list can go on and on and on, right? He even tells us to hear, to believe, to repent, and to be baptized. You know, what do we need to have? Well, we're blessed to have our ministers here, our preachers, a whole sermon series on growing in the grace and knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. Well, you know what? Because we need to have knowledge. We need to have grace. We need to have wisdom. We need to have mercy and forgiveness. We need to have the right heart. We need to have our sins washed away. But you know what? If I am not obedient, that's not who I am, then you know what? I can hear, you can preach it to me. You can believe it. You can do those things. You can tell me I need to believe. You can tell me I need to repent. You can tell me I need to be baptized so that I can have my sins washed away. But you know what? If I don't have an obedient heart, if I don't have a humble, if I'm not a humble person to humble myself before the Lord, if I'm not kind, loving, if I'm not benevolent, you know, we're told to give. That's what we have to do. We have to give so that we can, but you know what? If I'm not benevolent, if I don't have the right heart, you see, I mean, I can still give. That's what I can do. In fact, here's what I have. But the Lord says, cheerful heart. That's who you have to be, a cheerful person. Now, as I was thinking about the lessons that were presented this morning, David and Brother David and Brother Rob talked about the eldership. And you brought up the passages from 1 Peter chapter 5. And you know the title, what's interesting is you know the title, do you guys remember the title of the slide? Being. You saw it now. It's been there the whole time. Being faithful followers. That's the definition of leadership. Being faithful followers. So when you talk about the elders, and if you can turn right now to 1 Peter 5 and go back to those verses. But you know what was right there in the language the whole time? The scripture said, as far as the eldership, they need to be overseers. They need to be willing. They need to be honest. They need to be eager. They need to be an example. They need to be humble. The qualifications for eldership, if you go back and look at them, are all about who you need to be. They're not about what you need to do, what you need to have. Those are not the qualifications. They're just what you need to do as once you meet the qualifications of being. So, what was great is, and then, you know what it says, what do you need to do? Well, elders, you need to serve, and you need to shepherd. That's what you need to do. But you see, if you're not willing, and you're not eager, and you can't be an example, and you're not humble, right? Then you really can't serve. You can't do it. You can't serve, and you can't shepherd. And you know what? What do you need to have? In those passages, it says, what will you have if you are willing and honest and eager and humble? What will you have as an elder? You will have followers. Because that was the title of your slide, being a faithful follower. And you said that we are sub-shepherds, if you will. Right? So to be that, and you know the last part of that passage that you presented to us? It says that if you are willing, honest, and eager, an example and humble, if you are these things, then you will have a crown of glory. Yes. The very last thing mentioned in those passages that then Jesus says, here's what you will have. So, you guys didn't know this, but I'm here to pick on you. I told this to Brother Billy just a second ago, right? And we just heard a wonderful lesson from Brother Billy. Come on, phone. He talked about the Lord's attributes. And you know what? You made this statement, Brother Billy. You said, somewhere in your lesson, you said, reaching the will is the hardest part. I heard that. You know why? You know, what is the will? It's who I choose to be. You see, convincing people who they need to be is a lot harder than telling them what to do and giving them what they need. You see, you said that I like to know what makes somebody tick. What do they do that makes them tick, right? Or what do they have that makes them tick? But you said, but at some point, or they just be a tick. But you said be was really the key, right? Right? What's really important is why are they a tick? That's who they're being.
Yes.
Now you talked about the Lord's attributes. And in that passage, it said, this is what Jesus said. He knew that he had to be first the Son. When they went looking for him, he said, I will be in my Father's house. Because he understood that first and foremost, he had to be the Son. Now, because he was the Son, and is the Son, then what does he need to do? What did he need to do the Father's will? And what did he need to have in order to be there? But so who was Jesus being in those passages you mentioned? Well, when we go back, you told us, and you pointed out, right? He is the shepherd of our souls. That's who he is. That's who he is being. He is being the shepherd of our souls. You also said he had to be sinless. He had to be submissive. He had to be submissive. He had to be compassionate. He had to be courageous. Speak up to those Pharisees like that. Now, what did he do? Well, he taught. He preached, he healed. Those are the things you pointed out, right? Now, because he started with, first of all, recognizing that he was the Son, he needed to be the Son. He did the Father's will. Because he knew that he was the Son and is the Son, he did the Father's will. Right now, what did he have? Well, he has what we are right here today, disciples. He has disciples. He has followers. And you even point out, he has authority. You see, even Jesus himself said, the authority I have is simply because I'm the Son. So he knew that for him, even for him, it was about first and foremost who he is. Who did he have to be? Right? And so I just offer this as a lesson this morning. You know, what can we do? What's an exercise? Because this is about exercising leadership. So I provided you guys this little handout. This is something I find very useful, and I hope you'll find useful. But this little handout right there, that reminder, something to reflect on every day. Whether it's at the end of the day or the first thing you wake up in the morning, and you ask yourself, who do I need to be? Then what do I need to do? And what do I need to have to be the leader I need to be today? And then, you know what you do next morning? You ask yourself, what do I need to be? Then what do I need to do today? And what do I need to have today to be that leader? But you determine first, who will I be today? You see the passage here, Hebrews 5:14. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves. So, you see, if I every day reflect, who do I need to be? Tomorrow, who do I need to be? Who do I need to be? What do I need? Who do I, you know what that's called? That's constant use. And that's training yourself to be a better leader. Now, there's a simple little tool I like to use, and it's called Start, Stop, Keep. It's almost a little game you can play with yourself. But when you're asking yourself, you're reflecting, you're asking yourself, what do I need, or who do I need to be? What do I need to do? You ask yourself, you reflect on who you were yesterday. Growing, right? In the great, what do I need to do differently so I can be a better leader? What do I need to start doing that I haven't been doing? What do I need to stop doing that I don't need to do? And what do I need to keep doing that's in line with what the Lord expects of me? So you see, if I could go through that motion, if you will, right, that training every day, what do I need to start doing better? What do I need to stop doing that's hindering my leadership? And what do I need to keep doing that's going well for me as a leader? And that constant motion. And you know, I've been kind of doing this, right? Every day, kind of that repeat and repeat. That's training. That's practice. That's practicing leadership. I'm making this motion. You guys all seen the movie, right? When I was doing this, you notice I did it for a couple times and I never said it. But you know what's in your mind. The Karate Kid, right? But Mr. Miyagi, teach me karate. Oh, wax on, wax off. Mr. Miyagi, teach me karate. Wax on, wax off. Mr. Miyagi, please teach me karate. Wax on, wax off. Mr. Miyagi, please, wax on, wax off. And you guys know, you watched the movie, you saw the story. As soon as that first punch came, what happened? Wax on, wax off. You see what he didn't realize? Well, it was that Mr. Miyagi was really teaching this principle the whole time. See, all he wanted to know is, show me what to do. What skills do I need to have? And all Mr. Miyagi was teaching him was, it just has to be a part of who you are. And that just comes from constant use, practice. You see, being a leader is not a one-time gig. And it's not something that you inherit. But being a leader in the church and for our families is something that you have to develop every day and continue to grow, just like in grace and knowledge and all those other things. So this idea of be, do, have, and what I offer you guys is something that we offered you a pen as find the time each day to reflect as a leader and say, what do I need to start doing to improve my leadership, to do better, to be a better steward of this leadership that the Lord has given me, this opportunity He's given me. What do I need to stop doing? Because it's really a distraction. It's really a hindrance. And what do I need to keep doing? Because, well, the Lord said this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to keep doing the right. So that's my little lesson this morning. And I hope that you can walk out of here with be and do and have, and break out of this cycle of complaining that we find ourselves in of have, do, be, and learn these biblical lessons. So thank you so much for your time and attention. Feel free to take that home. I have more copies if you need them. I'll turn it over to